Hello, hello, hello. Sorry for being a little bit late today, but it'll be well worth it, I promise you. But first, here's to Russ Cohen with something quick to say. What's going on, Russ?
Well, as Mike knows, he's living in through a big snowstorm, and it did get me thinking. The Bills are trying to get a new stadium, and if I'm the governor of New York, I'm not building a new stadium unless it's a dome. I mean, the time has come for Buffalo to get a dome. Minnesota eventually got it. You can't say you have home field advantage because you never won a Super Bowl. You might as well get a dome stadium now, so you don't have to have them go to Detroit again, and you don't have to worry about losing home games, and you can have more events.
Well, Russ, first of all, if you want to pay the extra $1 billion that the dome will cost, which the taxpayers
that's what they're going to have to do. That's what I'm telling you as governor. Yeah,
it's not.
Kevin, is Detroit a dome stadium? It is, right?
It is, yeah, and it's like the modern dome stadiums where doesn't have an Astrodome feel. It's airy and light and that kind of thing. So that's
why would I build you a new stadium, Mike, when the same thing's going to happen to the new stadium? I'm not doing it.
Well, not necessarily. The new stadium design is similar to Dallas in the sense that the field is open, but the seats are covered.
I like that.
So it will maintain.
Not that it never snows in Dallas, but whatever.
Right, but I mean, and snow. Obviously, snow can get in, but I mean, the whole thing with the situation this week is getting to the game because there are travel advisories and travel bans, clearing the seats when you have people out there that are doing stuff like clearing roads and not doing what they would need to do to clear everything. And really, it's like, I mean, it just would be, I love watching games that have snow in them, but it's not when it's like a complete, like they're talking about 3 or 4 feet around of snow where the Bills play in Orchard Park. So it was just not feasible. Excuse me.
I'm going to look on a map and I'm going to see where snow is the least, and that's where I'm going to put the stadium, and that's where I'm going to put a dome.
That's the idiotic thing, is that the Bills stadium is right smack dab in the middle of the snow belt in the south of New York, south of Buffalo. That's right where the lake effect snow hits, always the worst.
Like, there were scientists there. Why didn't they consult?
They back in 1972 when they built that stadium, they were just
looking football, man. It's football. It's supposed to be like this.
They probably just consulted.
They were just looking for the cheapest tract of land and the best.
If I was king of football, I would have every stadium be a dome, and every team would have to endure a snow game. Like, they would artificially snow in some places. It would have to be cold in some places. You'd have to have a windy game. There would be like a random thing before the game that would generate the weather for that game, and that's what you would deal with.
I stopped listening when he says, "If I were king of football."
Yeah, I did too. All right, let's get going.
That's fair, actually.
I think it makes sense. It would be fun. It would be fun if it was like random weather. If you're because I know you're a season ticket holder in Detroit, so you don't have to really worry. Right? Were you a season ticket holder when they were outside, Kevin?
No, I was not.
Yeah, so I think I don't know. To me, I'd like to see more cold weather. But let's start the show. Here we go. Ready, guys?
Yep.
All right, we're going to start the show. Here we go. The Hockey World. It is Friday, November 18th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm so lazy that I take my car to the car wash when there's a lot of snow on it.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I don't do that. I just take the snow off my car. I shovel. I do all those things.
I'm Kevin Allen. In case you're wondering, I wasn't involved in a fight. Nobody punched me out. Just a little minor surgery. Nothing to be worried about. But you'll have to put up with this for just a couple of.
You're not working on Joey Koster's book, Kevin?
Pardon me? Yeah.
I thought you might be working on Joey Koster's book.
No, that book does exist. But my friend Bob Duff did a piece.
Oh, really? There you go.
Joey Koster. So.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday. To tell you when the company's going in the hockey world. I'm feeling a lot better. I'm getting my strength back. I'm feeling like I'm really starting to realize the world around me exists again. But let's start with the show. And there were a lot of really good games last night, but I do want to talk a little bit about what Kevin you started off with, which is scoring, which I think is a really interesting topic because go give the fact you just gave, which I love.
Well, I mean, it's we've seen this over the last couple of years. Scoring has been up. Right now it's 3.18 goals per team per game. So, that means we're seeing 6.3 goals per game. And it's if this held, and likely it won't, but it could hold. This would be the highest scoring rate we've had in 29 years, almost 30 years. 1993, 94. I think it was 3.24 per team per game. It's really remarkable, and it's fun. I was watching the Red Wings Sharks last night, and there was a lot of goals. It was a 3-2 game. Suddenly it was 4-2, and then it was 4-4, and then next thing you know, it was 11 goals had been scored, and there's been a lot of games like that.
Usually it's loosey goosey for say the first 10 games, and then the coaches sort of break out the bullwhip and say you must play defense. And we're at the 20 game mark, and they're still doing it. But I do think as we get as it normally happens, as we get closer to the trade deadline and the playoffs, things will be downshifted a bit. And then you'll see not boring defensive hockey, but more responsible defensive hockey, which is what is usually played in the playoffs.
I mean, I think I've seen the uptick just for the crowds and overloads at the net. I don't think there's an uptick in clean goals. I'm seeing more of those. Hey, there's 3 or 4 guys swatting at the puck kind of goals, and I think more of those are going in.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I think that's true. I think there's a big crashing of the net thing going on right now. I do agree with that. I feel bad for goalies in this situation.
Oh yeah, it's a tough time for goalies. It really is.
Well, I think this is a contributing factor to this. I mean, how many teams out there have we talked about over the last few weeks that are looking for defensemen? I mean, at least 5. And you look at most rosters. I mean, not the Colorado Avalanche, not the Tampa Bay Lightning, but middle of the road teams. Most of them have 3, maybe 4 good defensemen, and then you're mixing in a 5, 6, and 7, or they have injuries and players who would not be playing normally are playing. I think that the lack of depth on defense and injuries in goal are contributing to that offensive upshoot, Kev.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's for sure. But you reminded me of something that I do want to talk about because this is the Buzzcast, and that is Erik Karlsson. I saw him last night. He had 4 points. He's really playing well. I mean, it's amazing to me how the absence of Brent Burns has changed it all for him, because it really has. He's king again. He's the minutes guy. He's not sharing it. He's the man on the power play. And he's a kid again. He's involved, engaged. He's, darting in and out. He's moving into the play. However, saying all that, and he's healthy, that's for sure. But saying all that, honestly, the discussions I'm hearing about how, the Sharks saying they'd be willing to trade him. I mean, I mean, they're still a rebuilding team with a guy making way too much money. and the fact that they were talking about, last night, there was a discussion about, what kind of packages it would take. Packages? I
know.
I just don't see this. Even if you did half the salary, it's over $6 million for the next 4 years, for 4 years. So
that's insane.
I don't see it. I mean, if you could get someone to take half that salary, I would assume they would move him, wouldn't they? Am I wrong about this?
Oh no, and see, we were talking about this yesterday, and my approach to this is it would have to be a team that money is no consequence. It would have to be a team that is desperately looking for a top pairing defenseman and who could eat the salary and not San Jose would have to retain a chunk, at least 30%, maybe 50%.
Right.
And it has to, but that team would have to not have to give up a lot in the deal. And if he ever goes on LTIR again, then it's something that, then it's going to LTIR. Like a team like Florida, a team like Toronto, a team like, those type of teams, they would be the target audience for Karlsson. With Toronto, and like, okay, they'd love to have him, but I mean, if he ended up like Jake Muzzin and somebody who ends up on LTIR, I mean, it would suck, but I mean, they could weather it. But I don't know many teams that could, Kev. It's like a team trades a couple players for him and they expect him to play, and then if he doesn't play, then that kills them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it as well as he's playing, and he was so visible last night. He was very entertaining, and he's got a slew of points. He gives them a chance. Like they beat Vegas, right, the other night. The Sharks did. Like he gives them an opportunity to rise up because he can win a game. There aren't many players in this league that can win a game, but Karlsson is going to get 4 points in a game. He can do that. So, I mean, he's like, he can be if he's going to play at this level, he can be a high impact player. But first of all, you don't know whether he can continue to play at this level. Number one. And secondly, the salary it just gets in the way. And there just aren't that many teams that can fit in even 5 million, let alone 6. So it's going to be interesting. And I know Mike favors the third team, and I think that's a little bit possible, but there aren't even many teams like that. There's only 2 or 3. So,
yeah. I just look at the Sharks and I'm confused. I don't know if they know what their plan is. I don't know if they've mapped it out long term. I think they're just kind of winging it. I honestly do. So I don't know what to say.
He's also playing into Karlsson's strength, the kind of team the Sharks are, and that's nothing against Karlsson, but he's better. I mean, he's allowed to do anything.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. Sure.
This was also true in Ottawa. Like at the end, like when he was still putting up big numbers. He is like when he's got to carry the puck. He gets to do what he wants to, and if he's put onto a team like Toronto with all those other players, it's a trade.
Probably get to a Stanley Cup. I don't want to minimize that.
Okay. In Ottawa, in his prime, when he's winning Norris trophies, he's got Mark Mathot's basically with him, and Mark Mathot was, "I'll take care of the defense. You take care of the offense." Right. And, that's like the thing is, and I've said this, of course, I focus in on Toronto. Erik Karlsson, John Klingberg, those type of defensemen are the wrong type of defensemen for Toronto to go after. So I'm just saying they could handle it financially, but I don't think it would be a good fit in terms of the style that he plays. A team like Florida may make more sense. But they don't have a lot to give up. I mean, Mike Greer would be driving Erik Karlsson to the airport. See you later. I mean, they're rebuilding. They want to be in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, and him scoring points and winning games for them is not doing them any favors. And they're rebuilding. So yeah, I mean, I could see him getting traded, Kev? Yeah, but the problem is the market is going to be very small.
Right. Yeah, it will be. Yeah, that's for sure. You brought up something interesting, Mike, and it'd be fun for us maybe to talk about this because I hear it all the time. And I wonder if you can really get away with that anymore. And what I'm talking about is what you just said. You have a pairing and one guy's all the offense and then the other guy takes care of the defense.
Sure.
Well, in today's complicated, sophisticated defensive strategy, can one defenseman really handle the defense on a pairing? I think not. I mean, what we're all trying to avoid in this league now is odd man breaks. And I don't care how good you are. It's hard to play a 2-on-1.
Well, I do see it. I see it with the Flyers. I mean, Tony DeAngelo is not a first pairing defenseman, but he's playing there. And Provorov really has had to cover a lot for him so he could roam a bit. Yeah, DeAngelo's physical, and yes, he can retrieve the puck to some degree, but he's weak defensively and he has bad defensive instincts, and Provorov has to cover up for that. It's not why the Flyers are losing, but it's a weakness.
Yeah, I know that it's being done, but my question is, does it work? I mean, when you do that, aren't you at a real disadvantage? That's what
I guess if you don't have defensive forwards, yes. If you have a couple of defensive forwards out there, then you're okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
I mean, I have seen instances for example, when they're playing together, Morgan Riley is the guy who is the puck rusher who jumps into the offensive attack, and TJ Brody is the defensively responsible guy who will stay back and cover. But Devin Taves, arguably the best defensive pairing in the league last year was Devin Taves and Cale Makar. I mean, Makar is focused offensively, but Makar doesn't. He's not reckless, and Taves is involved offensively, so they're sort of both engaged. I think that sort of balance works out, and maybe the days of having a defensive defenseman sit back and Sergei Gonchar playing forward basically
right.
Doesn't work. And I'll say one thing. Last night in the league, and we'll talk about the Leafs Devils game for a second in a minute. But last night we talked about it during the preseason, where the Leafs were experimenting with using Mitch Marner on defense late in periods to try to score a goal. They tried it for one shift in the third period when they were down 2-1, and it almost cost them the point that they got. He got burned by Nico Hischier. He got turned into a pretzel, and then he tried to slide to block a 2-on-1. Not many forwards. Sergei Fedorov could play defense, but not many forwards can play defense.
Sure. That's a good point. No, not many can. I was watching that game a little bit last night. There were actually it was a really interesting night of games because you had mixed conference to better teams, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I know the dogs are going nuts. There's a fox outside our backyard, and they keep every time. I blocked them off so they can't get down to it. They can only go on our deck, so they can't get to the fox. Right. Because the fox would just eat the little one. So yeah.
But I'll just say this about the Devils, because I've watched the Devils play a few games, but not like a whole game. And last night I watched a whole game of them playing against the Leafs, and I realize they're on a heater right now. They've won 11 games in a row, but Kev, they're for real. Now, if they like other teams, they have to get the goaltending. They have to get Blackwood. Vanacek, I don't think can play 60 games, but Hischier and Bratt and Jack Hughes, they've got enough offense. Their defense is solid. If they stay in this race, they're not going to trade off guys like Severson or Graves. They're going to keep the group that they have. They are really solid, and they're really skilled and fast.
Yeah, no, they really are. Are they? And probably Russ is best to answer this, but are they the fastest team in the league now?
I think they are. I was watching Seattle Rangers, and believe it or not, Seattle's up there too with the speed now. Tanev is one of those guys. But I do think the Devils are the fastest right now.
Yeah, they're so entertaining. With that, and the other element too, and they should put boxes at all the exits so people can drop off their apologies to Lindy Ruff, those that were calling for him to be fired earlier in the year. He's done a really good job of bringing them together defensively, which they don't seem good enough defensively yet. They are. So
they still have to get the goaltending, and right now they're getting it. That's the only thing that could derail their season. The only thing.
And last night, the only reason that Toronto earned a point was Matt Murray. Matt Murray was fantastic. He kept them in the second and the third period. It was 2-1. They got a lucky goal to tie the game late in the third. But in overtime, and this is how good the Devils are right now. It was 57 seconds before Sharon Govich scored the winning goal. They had the puck for 56 of 57.
I saw that. Yeah, they are. There's two different things we talk about now. There's fast, and then there's play fast, right? I think there's teams that are fast. The Rangers are very fast,
right?
But Seattle's not super fast, but they play fast, and the Devils play fast. Montreal plays fast. This I still go back to. I think this was invented by Vegas. This is why Vegas was so successful. Is this concept? It's not invented by them, but the concept of playing incredibly fast hockey. It's something that younger players can do better than older players for sure, because the younger players have been taught this more. They've been taught how to these quick pass, boom, boom, boom. Then move up the ice, with 3 passes, super quick. Devils do it incredibly well. Sabres, when they're playing well, do it really well too. By the way, that's another.
Just as an example, when I was watching Flyers Bruins, and the Bruins have a few lines that can move really well. The Flyers had the line with Nick Delorier out, and someone gave him the puck to try and get on the breakout, and it looked like a guy who was barely skating, and he couldn't even hold on to the puck because he couldn't move. Those kinds of players, you can't give them much ice time, and they gave him a 3-year contract. It makes 0 sense.
Yeah.
Wanted to talk about that Dallas Florida game. We'll go answer what Russ said, then I'll talk about that.
No, I mean, listen, Delorier. I like Delorier, but this is not the right spot for him. Like, I think that.
No, if you're down on the fourth line of the Tampa Bay Lightning and you're in the playoffs, he might do something for you.
I actually think that they could move him at the trade deadline.
Not without contract.
But that contract, it's not that big. It is a couple years, but it's so small. Like, it's not that much money.
It's 3 years. Nobody wants him for 3 years.
I think he could move it, Russ. I think that there's a team out there that needs physicality. He
does like he was really good last year.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, like there's places he is really good.
A team like Anaheim, where he was, if Zegras and McTavish start getting picked on again, they know he's a good teammate. They'll want him back.
Before we get into the other game, like I wanted to do something else for a second, real quick, because 8 years ago, one of the thrills of my life.
8 years ago,
and this was the great moment that I just it just showed up on my thing today, Kevin. My Google photo says, "Look where you were 8 years ago."
Wow.
Yeah, this is Kevin Allen getting into the Hall of Fame.
4 years. 4 years for Delorier. 4. Sorry.
4 years for that. Okay.
Is that Shane Malloy's head there? Right.
Probably. No, I don't know. That's of course Erik Karlsson giving Kevin the award, but it's like this is that was such my wife and I just unforgettable, Kevin. So I can't thank you enough for that.
Yeah, I didn't even know this was the anniversary of that too. 8 years, boy. It's just moved on.
I got a chance to meet your extended family. I got a chance to meet it was just that's where I met the Cheritops, who've become like really good friends. It's such a great memory. I'm so really just
that's actually my son there right at the front. That's back of my son's head there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So I have the recording. I have the speech you did too. I recorded it. I have that too. But it was really just it showed up. It was funny. Your Google Photos just shows up. Where were you 8 years ago today? And bam.
Yeah. And I have to say, because I was up there for Hall of Fame weekend on Saturday. I didn't go to the Hall of Fame game. That was the game where Borja Salming was acknowledged by the crowd. And there was the presentation on Monday. There was nothing mentioned during the Hall of Fame ceremonies on Friday about Al Morganti and Bill Clement.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Really?
Not
I'm actually
only for the Saturday night thing when they're at the actual event.
At Scotiabank Arena, they were not introduced. Nothing.
That's terrible.
Now I know that there was a luncheon, Kev. I'm pretty sure there was a luncheon by.
Yeah, there was a Monday. I mean, usually the way it worked for me was, we have our own special deal, and sometimes the player honorees show up, sometimes they don't. But on the night when the players make their speeches and the builders, they usually run a video of the writer and the broadcaster. So I thought it was fun this year because both the guys were from Philadelphia. Having Billy Clement and Al Morganti, I thought that must have made it special for them. That was cool, but. It is an amazing event to be a part of, and I still every once in a while get a request in the mail. I don't know how people find me, but in this Google age, it's really not all that hard of an autograph guy looking for who just collects all the different writers who go in and all that kind of stuff. So cool. It is kind of fun, but that was it was a memorable night for sure.
Oh, it was incredible. It really was. And along those lines, we also have this I want to talk about for a second before we get any further. Because you have a book, Kevin, that just came out. And this is a book that you worked on with Bernie Nicholls.
Yep.
Right. It's on Amazon.
Yep, for sure. It just came out. It's a really cool cover there. If you can see, it's called "From the Floodlights to the Bright Lights," and that's a picture of. How Bernie sort of grew up playing.
That's nice.
Yeah, and this story was unique for me. Like I've done a lot of stars. I mean, I did Roenick, I did, Chelios, I did Brett Hull, but this one was interesting for me because his background. Like Bernie came from, he had never flown on an airplane, really had not been out of Canada much. And then he goes and he flies to Hollywood. So he plays for the LA Kings. And so he goes from a Canadian, small town Canadian player to a guy that's dating Playboy centerfolds and hanging out at the racetrack and betting and playing cards. So it's quite a contrast. And he's one of 8 players to score 70 goals in a season. Like he was a remarkable player. And he had a friendship with Wayne Gretzky. They hung around. He's got some pretty funny stories about their friendship. And he's had he's had some momentous events in his life, and there's some tragedy involved in it as well.
There's some definite tragedy. I've interviewed him for a Ranger book or two, and it's amazing how he's recovered from that, honestly.
Yeah. And that the trade that sent him from LA to New York, that was a trade that really made it possible for the Kings to get to the Stanley Cup final in '93, because Thomas Sandstrom and Tony Granato played with Gretzky for a large chunk of that time, that year that they beat the Leafs and then went to play the Canadiens. So it was a big part of that team getting as far as they did.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it was a pretty shocking trade for him. It happened at the All-Star game, and he had gotten assurances from Bruce McNall that he wasn't going to be traded, and we know how that works.
Bruce McNall, I don't know if he's the most trustworthy guy.
So. Well, I mean,
look where he ended up.
So, and also Neil Smith told him he wouldn't be traded in New York, and then he was traded to Edmonton. So
as good a guy as Neil Smith is, you never can believe him either. He made so many deals that,
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, players have to just expect that.
Yeah.
There's a chance they're going to be traded, especially in that era where you didn't have the protection of no trade clauses, and although that won't prevent you from being traded, at least you have some control over where you're going to go.
Right. Oh yeah. No.
But it was a fun book. My wife overhears my interviews, and I came late to this book. Okay. Like I wasn't originally involved in the project, and just think of me as the I was the closer. They brought me in at the very, very end, and I kind of brought it home a little bit. But my wife would listen to me interview him, and she's kind of heard this through the years because I've done a lot of books, and right away she was fascinated by him. Just because he's just a real interesting interview, and he's really kind of down to earth, and I had a really good time talking to him. So
I was wondering about that, because I know that you're an easy person to talk to, I'm sure, and I know that these that's got to be the most fun part of this, is just to sit down with these guys and just talk, right?
Yeah, and we sort of kind of hit it off. Like he really, when I entered the book, I wanted to bring. He's a real big hunter. Mm-hmm. And he's hunted moose and bear, and his family has owned actually a hunting. I'll call it a lodge, but that it's more of just there's a cabin or two, and they have land that you can hunt on. And I brought a lot more hunting into the book because he had good stories, and he liked that, and his dad. I thought right away that there needed to be more of his dad in that book, because he basically, according to Bernie, kind of created who Bernie was. And so there's an entire chapter about his relationship with his dad. And, Bernie's a trapper, going out. Oh yeah. Muskrat and beaver.
Wow.
He's got all kinds of, his big goal is to be and I actually told him that he would be the only guy, and he really liked it. He would be the only person in the world history to have scored 70 goals and to get a shoot a moose with a 70-inch rack. That's the most he has is I think it's a 56-inch rack or a 50.
Moose are huge.
Oh yeah, but the big ones, if you can get one with 70-inch rack,
Oh my
that's
gosh, I
considered
can't
it.
imagine how
I would never have known that. I'm not a hunter, but that was sort of.
I'll
they're
tell you
the
a big
biggest
thing.
North American land mammal.
I don't know how much you delved into this, Kev, but a couple of years ago I wrote about the Kings and their drafting, their pluses and minuses for for an Amazon series, and Bernie Nicholls at 73rd overall was one of their best draft picks ever.
Yeah, no, for sure. And he was an instant success. I mean, he played on that team, pretty quickly. But the other thing about Bernie, and it's detailed at length, he's a masterful, practical joker. Yeah. Some of them were too much for me, but he pulled them off. And there's a great scene there of Tiger Williams shooting an arrow at Bernie in the dressing room, which is just an incredible thing, with a crossbow.
With a crossbow.
I'm not surprised because Tiger had a little bit of a screw loose. Let's just say. Yeah.
So anyway, it's a good book. In terms of he had a lot of stories.
I like the floodlights, the bright lights thing so much because when I don't think many people. I kind of think of him. I put him in the LA glitzy thing, in my head, and people would never think about it. They're saying he was probably the furthest from LA glitz.
Oh yeah,
that you could get. But I like the floodlights. The bright lights is great. It's awesome. I mean, it's a really great title. It's awesome.
Yeah, I want to. This is what I like about Bernie because he was really amused by this. That Wayne Gretzky invited him to lunch and. He's, and they're in LA and he's thinking, wow, like, where will we go? Could be some cool place. And they start walking and Wayne just walks over to McDonald's. And that's where they always went.
Not even In-N-Out Burger. I mean,
he and Wayne would walk out of the LA Forum and just walk over to McDonald's and have lunch. They did that, quite regularly. So,
crazy.
Yeah. He's got some, interesting perspectives on life in LA.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right. Before we
get Kevin, I'm going to get into my. I might go ahead and do your thing, and then I'm going to get into this topic.
Yeah, I just because we were talking about goaltenders and lack of availability or lack of performance right now, and how that might be contributing to offensive numbers. I mean, last night the Dallas Stars. They chased Sergei Bobrovsky after 4 goals on 11 shots. They end up winning the game 6-4. And Bobrovsky, if you look at his stats right now, he still played more games than Spencer Knight, but his goals against is 3.45. His save percentage is under 900. Knight is clearly playing better. But, I mean, Kev, the problem is that Florida – you've got this $10 million albatross. You have to play the guy because if you want to move him in a year or two, and you've got Knight locked up on a long-term deal here at $4.5 million starting next year. I mean, right now it's a long. You've got him on an entry-level contract, and you've got Bobrovsky making $10 million. But when you're spending $14.5 million on goaltending next year. I'm sorry, if he's not your starter, you got to find a way to get him off your roster.
Yeah, I mean, every time I watch them, I think about that because I really don't see any. And Eck and I have talked about this. I don't see any way for them to do that. Even if you take half his salary, now you're at a $5 million goalie. I guess it's doable then, maybe, but.
But he's not playing at the level of a starter right now. That's the problem. It's like $5 million backup, fine, but I don't know. I'm looking right now at what the buyout would be after this year. And I don't think it would be, it's a $10 million cap hit for 3 years. The buyout would be a 6-year spread, and you're saving $3.33 million the first 3 years, and then it goes down. So you're not saving a ton of money, and that's not enough to justify buying them out. I mean, I don't know. And
again, I always point this out, and I've seen actually several different general managers in multiple sports kind of talk about this at length. When they see people always talking about buyouts, they say, when you say that, kind of cavalier, you underestimate how difficult it is to call your owner and tell him, we're going to have to pay this guy. for the next 8 years on a 4-year deal, and we're going to get nothing out of him, and we can't trade him. Like he said, that is such a hard call, and he said people just kind of feel like you got to buy him out. It's not that easy.
No. And at the end of the day, I don't think Florida. I mean, I really don't get the impression from talking to people there that they really, think about like they're playing him like they have to play him because they're making that kind of money. That's not why they're playing him. They're not playing him because he's making a lot of money. I don't get that impression at all. They're playing. I mean, he's making that kind of money. It wasn't signed by the current general manager. You can't move it for sure, but they're playing him because they don't want to overload Spencer Knight. They want to They want to make Spencer Knight. They want to bring him along a little bit slower while they can. And they want to also, at the end of the day, they do at least have two legitimate goalies if one goes down.
Sure.
Or to make the playoffs. I mean, you need. And I'm working on a story for this. I've been in statistic mode since I was sick, and I had a lot of time to do statistics. I was working on something about how important it is to get points from your backup goalie in making the playoffs, like how important that is. Yep. And it's a staggering number too. Like I'll bring that up next week. You won't believe how many teams who don't get like a 600 winning percentage or from their backup goalie don't make the playoffs. Like you have to get that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you could say that right now, like Erik Karlsson and Samsonov have saved Toronto's season by the way that they played.
How many times do we see that? I mean, we see that all the time. Like a backup, like remember Fleury coming in, or Matt Murray originally, even when he was with Pittsburgh coming in, and it was Fleury that got the Penguins to the playoffs the first year that Matt Murray won the Stanley Cup. Remember that? It was because of Murray, who was the backup at the time, basically because of Fleury playing when Murray was hurt, that they get to the Stanley Cup. So yeah, it's your backup, and so at least in Florida, they don't have to think about that. Like yes, they're spending all this money. And yes, it's a problem, but I think the way Zito sees it, I have to be creative on 2 or 3 players, and I'm all right. Like if I can get 2 or 3 players under where they should be, it'll even itself out, and that's how he sees it. I don't think he sees it as like this guy's making all this money. That's at least the impression I get. Okay, so we were talking about the Devils making the playoffs, and I'm very convinced that they will make the playoffs still. And you guys were kind of laughing at me about this a couple days ago.
Well, they've won 11 in a row, and the only team that has won 10 in a row and not made the playoffs were the Sabres of about 4 years ago.
Flyers did it.
Flyers too.
Flyers did it.
Flyers too?
Yeah, the Flyers definitely did it.
Okay.
The Flyers won 10 in a row and lost 10 in a row in the same season and didn't make it.
Wow. Okay, well then the stat that I read was wrong then.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm almost 100% positive that it was because they talk about it a lot here in Philly.
Okay.
So I wanted to know, I was trying to figure out the 20-game point because people always talk about American Thanksgiving being the day, right? And the 20-game point corresponds pretty closely with American Thanksgiving when I went past to the last 15 years, So what I did is I basically took the last 10 years and I said, okay, let's go to the 20-game point and see how many teams, because I said if a team makes 30 points in 20 games, they're almost guaranteed to make the playoffs. And I looked in a quick thing, I made sure that I thought that was true. And I guess, so I found out that in the last 9 seasons, okay, because I took out the season of when the divisions were different.
Right. North Division, yeah.
Yeah, because I thought I would just take that out. And I did include that too in a different way, and even if I include that, it doesn't matter because everybody made the playoffs and got to 30 points. So I could have kept it in there. So over the last 9 seasons, 23 teams have gotten to 30 points in 20 games. Because you guys wondered how many teams there were. That many teams.
It's more than I would have guessed. But
right,
yeah.
It's probably only a couple, right? And what's interesting is it's trending upward. Like more teams are getting to 30 points every season recently. And I think that's because of what we talked about, the parity thing. Like if you go back to 14, 15, nobody got there.
Now, are we talking about in the post, loser point era? Because obviously 30 points in 20 games before that,
That's why I went back to 14, 15. I wanted to keep it I didn't want to go too far back. I'd like to go further back. There's not like a website that tells you this. You really have to go through it. It takes a while. There's not just an easy way to search this and everything. So 23 teams have made it. And how many teams have missed it? Do you think? In the last 9 seasons, 20 of the teams that made 30 points
have missed the playoffs, even though they got 30 points
in 20 games. Yeah, 30 points. There's only one. Okay, I'll tell you that. There's only one. You might be able to think of it if you think about who it is. This is a team that had an incredible start in 15-16. We're going back a ways, but that would be the Montreal Canadiens. You remember the Canadiens 15-16 got off this crazy start and then just.
I try to blank out everything that has to do with the Montreal Canadiens, but.
So I said, okay, so 30 points is almost a guarantee, right? And the Devils are going to get to 30. So I'm thinking, okay, they're almost guaranteed. All right, but so I said, let's go back a little bit. Let's see where, so I went to 27 points, which is a lot more. A lot of teams get to 27. 59 teams have gotten to 27 points over the last 9 seasons.
Okay.
So by the way, for 30 points, that's a 97.5% chance of making the playoffs if you get 30 points. If you just take that example.
Okay.
So 59 teams over the last 9 seasons. How many teams have missed, do you think? That have gotten to 27 points in 30 games?
5.
Guess again, Russ. What do you think?
7.
Kevin?
9.
2.
Wow.
2 teams. So that's a 96% chance if you get to 27 points.
So that Montreal team is one of the 2.
The Montreal team is one of them,
Yeah.
right? The other team was St. Louis Blues, believe it or not. In one year it did it. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So New Jersey, as of now, has 26 points in 16 games. Okay, so that's where they are. And I was going through this,
Now 28 points in 17 games.
right. So I did this 2 days ago. So the other teams have a chance of doing this, to get into 27 points. Here's some other, Winnipeg has 19 points in 14 games. Dallas, now this is 2 nights ago, so they might have more points than this, but Dallas had 19 points in 15 games. And then these other teams like Carolina, 21 points, 16 games. Seattle, 19 points in 16 games. Toronto, 16 points in 16 games. And the Panthers, the Red Wings, and Canadians all have 17 points in 15 games going into last night, and that's changed a little bit.
Right.
But
I'm going to tell you, I'm skeptical because cap wasn't frozen. Injuries are definitely up in my eyes, especially to good players. And I can't tell you their goaltending's solid yet. So even with all the points they have an injury already in goaltending. If they have another one, I think this goes up in flames.
But I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I've been talking about before, what I've learned about, late in my career about the way the betting world works. Russ is talking about how he views teams in terms of where they are. In the betting world, they just look at the stuff that Eklund's talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why now when we watch football games, when the score is late in the third quarter and you see up in that right-hand corner, especially NFL games, this team has a 69% chance of winning this game. It's all based on all that.
Right.
Well,
There are professional bettors who really pay no attention whatsoever to
And Kev, when you're watching that game and it says 69% chance of winning, and all of a sudden the pick 6 is thrown, then it goes down to 49.5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. You're making my point for me. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's why they do that. It's all on math to them,
Well, yeah, it's weird. It's weird because, for example, and obviously we just mentioned at the beginning of the show how the Bills are going to play in Detroit, and they're playing Cleveland. Now you would think that the weather was factored into the over/under and the point spread when the game was supposed to be played in Buffalo. Now it's been shifted to Detroit, Kev, and the point spread has stayed the same. But the over/under has gone up because then now the weather won't be that much. They figure that be that much of a factor. So yeah, I mean, I can see how probability and if other things factor in. But when we look at teams, you have to factor in the here and the now of what's going on with them. And when a goaltender like Mackenzie Blackwood goes down with New Jersey, if they don't have he's supposed to come back, but if they don't have him right now, this team's absolutely red hot. They're doing everything the right way. Everything is going great. Yeah. That's going to change. And at a certain point, like Russ was saying, they need their goaltending. They need both of those goaltenders to earn them points when they're struggling. And I don't think Akira Schmid or Nico Dawes can get them as many points as Mackenzie Blackwood can. So
I'm not even worried about that as much as I just look at Vanacek and I say, decent goalie. He's never started more than 39 games. Right now, all of it's on his shoulders because I don't know what's going to happen with Blackwood. Am I betting on him to make it to the Stanley Cup? No.
And Vanacek got hurt about 2 weeks ago, and he just came back. So for
That's
about
the,
a week,
that's the issue. If they had a healthy Blackwood and he turned it around this year, and they had this number, I would be a lot more positive about it.
Right.
But
I want to know where this stops. Like I'm gonna do 25 and 23 points in 30 games. Just curiously, like when this starts, because we're still at 96% if you have 27 points in 30 games.
Well, and what doesn't take into account, and 10 years is not long enough. But I remember doing a story about the bettor who, I remember the quote. The quote was, "When you talk to a real professional bettor, half the time they don't even remember who the hell they bet on because they've just gone by the number of teams who are favored by 7, or 10, or whatever. The people who bet on mathematics, but when their study is over a long enough period of time, it takes into account that the Devils will not be the first team that had those 30 points that faced goaltender issues. And they've had to deal with those as part of it all, and yet there's still only one. Now, I would say 9 years isn't long enough to feel all that comfortable about that. So
it's not because we're taking out the number one. We're saying the backup's going to be the star of this season, and the backup doesn't have much of a track record.
Yeah, but they can, they can remedy that. There's ways for them to go out and improve their goaltending.
They haven't been able to do it. That's the other thing. The front office hasn't been able to do that in any season other than right now with Vanacek. That is the best that they've been able to do in the last 3 years.
But they're on strike 2 right now because strike 1 was Corey Crawford and strike 2 was Jonathan Bernier. And now if Vanacek seems to have hit, but Blackwood's been the consistent problem because he's been hurt. He's had COVID issues. There's just a number of things with him. And like I said, a lot of these teams like Boston with Swayman and Allmark, like Toronto with Samsonov and Murray, and like the Devils, they need both their goaltenders. I don't think they can ride one. I don't think Vanacek is capable of playing 60 games, and then they might make the playoffs because they've been so good early on. But I don't know if they're going to have a long.
I agree that 9 is
well,
not.
That's what we're talking about, though, making the playoffs.
Yeah, making the playoffs. I mean, I agree 9 is not enough, and I do want to do more. I'm gonna stretch it out to 20 probably, just even go to like the new quote unquote new NHL, which is like 2004-5, right? So if you go to that, I think the interesting thing also about this is, like I said, the number of points the teams are getting to. So in 2021-22, which is last year, 4 teams got to 30 points in the first 20 games. They would be Carolina, Florida, Toronto, and Edmonton. Those were the 4 teams that got there. And then, like I said, 2020-21, which was the weird year, Tampa and Toronto were the only 2 teams that got 30 points in 20 games. Washington in 2019-2020, Washington, the Islanders, and Boston. But then if you go back, like the year before that, 18-19, only 2 teams, Tampa and Nashville. 17-18, only Tampa. 16-17, only Montreal. So it's weird how it gets less. So you're talking about, and this year you're at least looking at 3 teams getting there. It's very possible that Winnipeg and Dallas could get there as well. You could be looking at 5 teams.
See, I would bet against Winnipeg. I just would.
So there, where
Dallas, I think, can do it.
Winnipeg, did they win last night? Winnipeg, I was trying to.
I'm skeptical about Winnipeg still.
Well, I mean, Winnipeg right now, they've been getting great goaltending from Hellebuck, but they're going through some injury problems up front. Ehlers is out. They think it's long term. Appleton's out, so that's an issue. Now they do have a boatload of defensemen, and there's been a lot of chatter of them trading one of their defensemen to get a forward. But I don't think if you trade a Logan Stanley, you're going to get a guy that replaces Nick Ehlers.
All right, so they've got 21 points in 15 games, Russ. So
I know
they're only 6 points away from 27. And if they've got 5 games left, so it's like.
But I think this is as good as the Winnipeg Jets can play. I don't think they will keep this up.
So I mean, it's very possible we see another team this year get to 30 points in 20 games, but probably not because of the disparity, like because of how big the differences are. Like if you get out to that kind of a start without parity in the league, its chances of you getting caught are really small. Like
if you get off to that kind of start, if you go 500 the rest of the year, you're making the play.
You're okay. Yeah, you're going to be fine. And I mean, and when I looked at the Montreal season where they got off to that really good start and didn't make it, because they had 31 points in 20 games.
Yeah.
They were absolutely horrific.
Well,
I mean, and still just missed the playoffs by like 4 or 5 points.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead, Kev.
But for those of you who've watched politics, this is really exactly the same thing. You know, when you're watching those races and CNN and NBC and Fox, you know, they'll say, okay, from this point on, because they've built up this amount of lead, that, you know, they've only got to win 42% of the rest of the deal.
We're going to protect Winnipeg Jets as a playoff team, Kevin.
So Winnipeg is probably going to get elected.
Hockey Buzz will call it tomorrow.
Yeah, Winnipeg is John Fetterman.
I think Hockey Buzz should wait on that projection.
We're not going to call that yet, but I'm going to call the Devils.
They're not. Yeah, because they don't have the 27 points. So
right, the guy gets the 27 points, and even then, I mean, that's still.
But I mean, again, it's just math. You know what I mean?
Yes.
As much as Russ wants it to be about, you know, but I mean, all that is true. That doesn't mean it would never happen.
Right.
No, but that's math will hold up, I'm sure, 75% of the time, but there's just real world weirdness and randomness that will definitely play.
Yeah. Well, but it's not 75. It's 95. So
you can say the Devils have roughly a 97% chance of making the playoffs.
If that were the case, nobody would ever win money.
The reason I kept saying that the Islanders were not going to make the playoffs last year after 35 games was because of math. Somebody on this panel, who I won't say who,
that was easier to. Let's face it, that was a lot easier.
Listen, and that is the funny thing about this. Is I'm doing this, I'm like talking to my wife, who hates.
That was easier to predict.
My wife hates these kind of statistics more than anything else. So she's like, while I'm sick, she's watching me do this, and she's like, it goes against everything you do. Like, I'm like, yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm still always going to pull for that outside chance.
But I mean, what it comes down to is this: if you were a really good bettor who did everything about math, you would bet all of those teams this year who make 30 points to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
and you would do well.
You do well.
Yeah, it's not a bad bet.
Yeah,
definitely 100%. And now and what's interesting is that I started doing the 25-point thing, and it's going to be over 80% as well. Like, it's going to be like at 80, and that's only 5 points over 500 at the 20. So 25 is even really good. You'll be amazed at how. I mean, most teams, a lot of teams are at 20. I'm sure 20. You would think 20 would be 50-50 roughly. I don't know, but we're going to work our way down.
25 points is still a 100-point season.
Still a 100-point season, right? There you go. It's actually more than that, right? Because they're only talking about 20 games, right? So no, it's not. It's not a 100-point season, is it? Yeah, it is a 100-point season. I'm sorry. Yes, it's probably like 103 points because there's more games in there. So I mean that is still that point. So that shows how important starts are, and I know I just you can see it. It's
there's no doubt. Good starts can help fuel your season. No doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing this plays out.
One team that has gotten off to a good start and will get to 30 points in 20 games, I believe. Let's see, where are they in the standings currently? The Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh yeah, they're going to make it.
Yeah, they're at right now. They're at 14-4, so 28 points in 18 games. So if they win one more game, they'll be at that mark. And I had a real issue with the criticism last year when it came to Michael Bunting, who was 25 years old, which is below the mark that you qualify for the Calder. Right. And people are saying, well, he shouldn't be part of it. Why not? You set the bar. If you're under the age of 26, you qualify for Rookie of the Year. The same criticism is being lumped at Logan Thompson right now. And I'm sorry, if he leads the league and wins, he's one of the Calder finalists, and everybody should shut up.
Well, I wouldn't say it like that, but I agree.
He'll be in the race for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I said this all the time to voters in the Writers Association. Look, all kinds of factors influence how we vote on people. But those should be your own and personal. And for you to say publicly, I'm not going to vote for a guy who's eligible according to the rules because you don't like it, to me is wrong. And if we don't like that a 25-year-old is competing with an 18, then we should ask the league to change the rules.
Right.
That's what we should do.
Yeah, right.
As a writer. So I've never liked that. I mean, I get that things influence how you view candidates, but like you shouldn't disqualify someone publicly just because you don't like that aspect of the rule. Those are the rules. We should follow the rules.
Yeah,
so
well,
I agree with Mike.
I agree. I do want to mention something. Mike just put it in the in our chat room. Martin St. Louis is going to face John Tortorella for the first time tomorrow night. He said it'll be an honor, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing about that. Anytime, and I had this happen in my life in business where my mentor guy loved me, mentored me, whatever, until we had a bet on who was going to, outproduce the other. And when I outproduced him, he wasn't as good a friend anymore. And I'm just saying in this game, John Tortorella will say all the right things, but he does not want to lose to Martin St. Louis. So this will be an incredible game to watch from the Flyers bench to see how Tortorella reacts, because if he gets tuned up by the Canadians, this will affect the team more than just an average loss. But if they win, then everything's fine.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, Tortorella is starting to come apart a little bit at the seams, which was to be expected.
But that is providing cover to a team that is not very good. And that's what he's doing. He's providing this team. We looked at it objectively, not with any kind of like rubbing our hands with glee. We looked at this team going into the season without Couturier, with Carter Hart's having a fantastic season. They're a bottom 6, bottom 7 team. You can't play Patrick Brown's and Zach McEwen's in place of top 6 forwards and play kids with talent like Morgan Frost and not play them and expect to win.
Well,
so
Frost is playing more and he's playing a little better, but I get your point. McEwen can't be on the second line. Delorier is in the lineup. Doesn't make sense. There's things Tortorella could do to have more potential scoring in there, but he would rather fall back on the forecheck. And the problem is, you could be the best forechecking team in this league, and you're still going to lose games.
Last night was like watching an old Columbus Blue Jackets game, against the Bruins. It was a close game for a while.
Yeah.
They kept it close. It was 0-0 for a long time. It wasn't really close, but it was 0-0. And, and before the game, on television, they made a big deal about the fact that, that Brown was healthier.
I know.
I mean, it's like, I'm like, wait a second. We wasn't, to me, it was almost like, wait, that's right. Yeah, he's not playing.
Brown was barely a factor last year.
I know. It was like a big, making his big debut tonight. It's like, hold on, it's like, this is not what you're going to get the public excited about in Philadelphia.
No, but that's what the coach wants. The coach
that's the only story you had.
Full of Patrick Browns, so he doesn't have to worry about them turning over the puck or whatever. But they're not going to score key goals. That's the problem.
That is the problem. And that is different. All the time we have for today. I have one thing from Ekman's Basement today I want to shake this real quick. So, you guys remember this?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you remember Blip?
Yep.
Yeah, this is like one of the original, this I found when I was doing some cleaning. And this is one of the original Pong type games, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the way it works, it's really interesting. It's got a timer on it, and you have an on button here. So
I was cleaning out my basement over the summer, and I found the old game Merlin. Do you remember Merlin?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Where it was like a pattern that you had to remember.
It makes this number, and it's like there's a thing that goes back and forth, and the way you actually return the ball was by hitting 1, 2, or 3 wherever it went.
Wow.
So if it was on the left, hit 1, middle 2, right 3.
Boy, what technology!
This technology, I know this technology is best, but
it seems like the cavemen played that.
It did they even have the box, blip, 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 blip. Remember the song?
Yeah, I never bought it. I didn't.
Yeah, no. I remember it, but I never bought it.
It's kind of hockey-like, but it's like, it's really, I don't know. It's very, when did this come out? This came out in 1970-something.
I had the Coleco football and the Coleco.
Yeah, I had the Coleco Vision, and then I went and I spent I had a credit card and I charged up the credit card with the original Nintendo and a few of those games when that came out, and buried myself in my room for a while. That was fun.
Yeah. 1977.
That compared to like the Xbox X that I have and the technology. I mean, it's Yeah, it's like the Apollo missions with the computers that were big
Yep.
as rooms, and now my phone would have more power than those computers would.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and yet, so Tony in the chat room says he's got an old Vex checks, which I would love to see because I've seen those. They're expensive when they come around, but it's one of my things. Like in my arcade collection, I only can buy arcade machines that are under $200. That's my rule. So that's
I still have an old PlayStation that worked.
then I fix them up from there. Yeah. So I learned a lot of how to fix things from fixing up arcade games on YouTube.
I have to go pick up Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 because I'm gonna have a lot of time on my hands buried here.
There you go. Yeah, well, enjoy the snow, Russ. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everything. Thanks, Mike. Enjoy the snow, Mike, not Russ. Sorry. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you back on Monday.